della visibilità queer in Tunisia. E poi Sara Borghillo, che è la professoressa Sara Borghillo, che insegna storia dei paesi islamici all'Università di Roma a Tor Vergata, e che riprenderà lo stesso tema ma visto in un'ottica anche molto attuale, cioè la visibilità queer e la visibilità pubblica queer per una nuova politica di riconoscimento in Tunisia dopo le rivoluzioni del 2010-2011. Allora do la parola alla mano.
I need to start today. Again, I'm going to speak in English. Please stop me at any point. So, I'm going to speak about the current situation now in Tunisia and this entire wave of visibility that is happening. And what are the consequences that are also happening because of this. So the first thing that you can notice when you go to the capital, for example, in Tunis, when you land in Tunis, you will find a very diverse and open society, the way it seems like physically speaking. Like you meet a lot of women who are, some of them are married, some with short hair, some very normal, as if you are in Europe actually. You don't see a big difference. And it has been always the case in Tunis. It's not really something new, especially in the capital. It's known for its diversity. Now, lately, and especially after the revolution, after the revolution, there were some movements that were calling to be more visible, especially to the queer movement. Because the thing is, if you are not visible, you cannot claim your rights. So, the associations,
Seguite? Non c'è bisogno che io faccia riassunto.
It's great. So many LGBT associations were registered after the revolution. They were not created after the revolution, but they've been working in secret in some here, and they were just some of them were just some group of friends and activists that were gathered by the same principles. So after the revolution, it was an open scene for everyone to raise and be there and be visible. The thing is, the political scene was not the most favorable scene ever because of the Nahda ruling in the Islamist party was a bit dominating. And at a certain moment, I remember myself that the people were going back to be more religious because before the revolution, the president was fighting against Islamists. So people thought that now maybe it's time to regain this our religion and to give dignity to our religion. It took it a bit too personally. So kinda the society was divided into two. The civil society trying to impose liberties, democracy, and many of the public people who elected also the Nahda were trying to be more conservative. It created a lot of issues, but at the beginning it wasn't really an issue for the LGBT movement because the Nahda did not have that power to start to harass the movement. So it was not a difficult situation. It was a normal situation for a society that suffered a lot from many things and now is discovering its diversity. Because at the beginning, when you talk about the LGBT movement or the queer people, Tunisians will tell you, but we don't have this in Tunis. Yeah, absolutely, that would be the answer really. And after the revolution and everything, people started to see that, this community exists and and it needs its protection because, but at the same time, since this thing became visible, now, legally speaking, there is the laws that criminalize homosexuality, and if you are going to be visible, then you will be vulnerable to these laws. And that created a lot of problems, because, for example, in 2017, there were 76 cases declared of people arrested because of homosexual behavior. And as I said, this is only the declared thing, and that's a very big number from the way I see it, because I know that other homosexuals also were imprisoned, but not with the same charges of homosexuality, because the public, the good behavior, many other things that the law and the penal code in general is flexible, pretty flexible to give you any kind of charge. So, with this problem now, there was also a thought or a way of thinking which is to try to influence the society to be more accepting. And many of these organizations, like Modelli, for example, they chose the artistic way. And there's where it happened, the Queer Film Festival, but also before that we were discussing the Shuf Association and the Shuf Tuhurna Festival that was, I myself, that was the first place and environment that I see all these women and all these queer women in one place. It warmed my heart, and I was young when it all started, and I was saying how brave they are to be this visible to everyone and say and be so open about what they represent, what they think, who they love. And I think these two were the basic cultural and artistic movement that built and paved the way to many other individual initiatives that are happening now. But they don't have, they're happening in small groups, in small places, and I admit they don't have the same influence as, for example, the Queer Film Festival or the Shuftu Honna Festival. But still, it's happening. It opened the door, and it showed that it's not impossible to create these artistic safe spaces for the community. At the same time, the political scene did not stop to evolve. And now, if we talk about today, to sum it up, because honestly, Tunisia in the past few years had more presidents than an entire country for 100 years. So, and change of governments and tools. But concretely speaking, now the situation, what is the situation right now? Right now, things are not so clear, and things are getting very, very, very bad. And some people and some sociologists would think that it's going backward to the way it was before the revolution. Very conservative approach, very strict behavior, and people are now today. If you write something about the system on Facebook, you get arrested the same day. It's not even questionable. 2 days ago, there were 2 kids from school, not university. They were singing a song, and it kind of attacked a little bit the police and their behavior, without even saying bad words or anything. They were arrested the same night. And there was, I don't know if you saw it anywhere, but
with an elephant.
yes, because the song was the Babar song. I don't know if it's a common between Italy and Tunis, but they were just singing a song. They revising for their course and decided to sing the song. They posted it. Like literally it had no political, and no background at all. It was for fun.
And it was on the street or in the public space?
What part?
This song.
No, it was on Facebook. It's just, they shared it on their personal Facebook page. They were arrested. The three guys, like more than 20 years, they were arrested the same night because the police and they told you abused and did not respect the police and the authority because of this song. And that's really alarming. And this case is not a separate or individual case. It's happening every day, actually. For example, now it's super unsafe and unstable for activists because they've been charged lately. They've been arrested and investigated with on everything. Apparently they've been monitored for some time now, and they have their names on the system because they're so afraid of them. And now many of these known activists are being persecuted, and the charges pressed against them is the conspiracy against the state. Like, for example, Bushra al-Hamida, it's a very famous feminist lawyer.
Sorry, what's her name?
Bushra al-Hamida.
Benhash.
Thank you.
And the charges are ridiculous. They took some of her private conversations on Facebook, speaking to one of her friends about something from France that she wants to bring, and they said, okay, so you deal with France, and so you deal with Almada, and you want the system to be down, and you deal with foreign parties, and I myself, while going out of the borders, I was investigated with, because on my passport there is a lot of stamps to countries that are a bit, it's clear that it's not for touristic because the periods are short. And they were investigating with me, and at a certain moment I thought I will go to prison to continue the investigation. I won't be able to travel, actually. Thank God, it's like I was calm, I was trying to play it cool and all, but this happens to me most of the time. It's not a new thing. I've been arrested many times. And then the problem is these individuals who do not have, for example, an entire organization behind them, they're not so well protected. If they act on their personal name, they are the most vulnerable. But if an NGO or association speaks by its own name, it's a bit less risky. But as I told you, now they are targeting individuals to make the leaders break, to make this. And also, one of the major things that say that the president actually is fighting the civil society in a very aggressive way, that all the permissions to create new NGOs and to create new associations are not being granted for many years now after the revolution. Because right after the revolution, it was open for everyone to register, and then they closed it for everyone. And now they're checking the databases of all the NGOs and associations registered to see what they are doing and where do they get the funds. And if they find that you get the funds from outsider parts, which is the case, Tunisia doesn't give any kind of funds, and they try to stop the funds of you and try to track it and find ways to make this kind of pressure. So yes, to sum it up, the situation now is really bad because the president and his policy are very, very conservative, and for him all these civil society things are just very threatening. And we are so afraid of what is going to happen. The individual liberties, we no longer talk see, we were at a high level to defend more important rights, and now we're back to basic to defend very basic rights. Please, if you have any questions, I'm sure I didn't speak about everything that is happening because it's really a lot and heavy. So if you are interested in a specific topic or in a specific thing, please don't hesitate to ask me questions.
Ci sono delle cose specifiche che volete chiedere alla dottoressa?
I think it's pretty clear. I mean, it's good to have a visibility about the current situation from a general perspective. So,
Amani, I have two things to ask you.
yes, please.
In Italy, historically speaking, from 19th century, the end of the 19th century, to recent fascist period, repression makes a great difference between what happens in the private space, into the house, or in the public space, in the street. And it reminds me of Iran. In Tehran, I read something, I'm not an expert, but I noticed that, for example, in that novel, Leggere Lolita a Teheran, reading Lolita in Tehran, the writer shows a situation when gets alive to attend her lesson in her house, in her home, as she has been fired from the university. And but they wanted to continue the course on Lolita. And they arrived black dressed with veil, and then they put off this stuff, and they are multicolored in their dressing, and they become other persons in private space, and they organize feasts. Drink wine, all what is prohibited in the public life is permitted in the secret of the houses. I would ask you if it's different in Tunisia or there is some difference also there. And then another thing, I noticed that very often charges to put in prison or to bring to the court LGBT people are very wide, general, and not specific.
The laws against them?
Not
The
the
charges?
the charges.
Okay.
During the and in Italy also it was something similar, because during the fascism, for instance, never there was a law against homosexuality, but it never was, it was specifically indicated. But public decency,
That's the case.
to cross-dressing, dressing in a way inappropriated, and so scandal, moral scandal, this scandal. So they could manage the law that they wanted.
Yes, I accept the fact that also with everything else that you can manage to press charges to a queer person, you have also the law that criminalizes homosexuality.
Yeah.
So it's a double punishment. For sometimes it's really not just the 3 years of prison of the Homosexuality Act, but it added to it public offenses. And speaking about Iran, I honestly don't see any similarities between Iran and Tunisia. It's really very different societies, super different societies. And I think Tunisia in itself is a very particular and unique society that does not resemble anything or any other example, because also Tunisia public is trying to live its life. They are not scared. Tunisians are not scared. And that's the difference. If you compare, which is something that I would never do, but if you see people comply for in Saudi Arabia or Iran, I think both are not so different. People try to go by the rules in public and do whatever they want in private, but Tunisians, it's not the case for Tunisians. Tunisians are so brave and they show who they are and they fight for who they are. And even if they know they're going to prison, they will express themselves and their opinions. And that's the strength of the Tunisian civil society, and even not even the civil society, but it's people who are educated enough to know what they want. And also there is this problem because in the Tunisian society you cannot, for example, pretend to be someone in the street and be free in your house, because many of the Tunisian women or men, because of the economic problems there, they still live with their families. So the family is the second conservative society that you have. So even when you are in your private space, which is home, you're not really in private, right? So, and Tunisians are not free to drink in front of their parents or to date in front of their parents or to show any kind of affection or love or anything. And now it's really problematic because most of the families do not accept if their son or girl is homosexual or queer or
different from the
yeah, absolutely. The norm, yeah, absolutely. They wouldn't accept these differences, and that's where it comes, because the first argument they tell you it's forbidden by religion, but that's debatable. But religions tend to take many things for granted, especially if they are related to religion. And that's the saddest part. Smart people like religions, sometimes I find it difficult to ask questions when it comes to the sacred. Whatever. Yeah, I hope I answered your questions.
altre domande.
I think it's
Anche in italiano, perché facciamo un numero in italiano. I don't know if it's too personal.
that's okay.
We are, private. Ma you said you've been arrested many times.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, are we not, I can ask you more
Sì,
about
ma
this.
a voce un po' più alta perché purtroppo l'acustica è
Okay. I told, she said she's arrested. You've been arrested many times.
Yeah.
Can you talk about more of this
Arrest?
Yeah, I don't know how could it be,
Okay.
never been, and so.
Yeah. Okay. With these arrests, most of them are not legal, with legal procedures. Most of them, and the most difficult ones, were right after the manifestations that you can have. So lately Tunisia had a new strategy, especially when it comes to we're feminists and these very difficult subjects to accept, they started to have drones to film the protests and take their pictures to identify them. Yeah, and it happened like, first time it happened 3 years ago. So since 3 years ago, my name, my picture, I have a very nice dossier. The tourism authorities. So,
Took your photos by the door.
yeah, not only me, everyone was there. I mean, especially the leaders of these movements, and many of us choose to wear masks or something to not be identified. And most of us are just, we don't really care. So after these protests that marked, and they were pretty violent, like really violent, we were identified, and now every checkpoint, which is pretty common in the capital, I don't know, you were there, I think you saw how many police was, not to protect anything, just to be in the middle of the street and to monitor who is there and how these people, and if you look like someone who is not conformed to the norms, they call you and like you need to give your papers. We're not in Europe to check if you have a residency permit, no, we just want to check who you are. So after these protests, every time I spent like more than 3 months, at the beginning of that year, more than 3 months, every time I pass through a checkpoint and they see me, they don't really like the way I look. Like, he passes my identity number and like, oh, okay, this is problematic. But still we don't have charges. Like, we don't have a concrete thing to take you to prison, and we don't want to make a scene, because now they are also afraid, because the civil society is really active, and when one of us goes to prison and you find everyone trying to defend and like putting pressure. So they started to harass us in a very different way. We just make it hard for you to exist, to work, to do whatever you're doing. So the policeman asks for my identity card, give him my identity card, and here is a lot problematic because, for example, I used to work without a contract, so I can't change my identity card. It's an old one since I was studying, and that's already something big for this, because I come from another city and I'm a woman, so they can start by asking, did you escape from your parents? What are you doing here? Many annoying questions that they start with, and then they look at you and they ask you, why is your hair short? What are these tattoos? And very private things. And some of them are really offensive, and I don't even want to go through that. Please forgive me, it's a bit traumatic. And you do this, and you are on the street going to work or going to study or going to do whatever you are, and like already 1 hour has passed. And then if you are polite enough, he will give you your card back and tell you to be good, to act good. And if you're in a bad mood and decide to fight, you're gonna stay there for the entire day. You can stay with them there on the street because they have your identity card, and they just tell you to step aside and just sit there and check your background. And then sometimes it goes to a fight, and I go to the police station and we start negotiating. Okay, why did you? And then the first thing that they do, that he disrespected the police officer. The guy was literally harassing me, and I'm the one disrespecting him. He's a man, a police officer, and I disrespect him. And I go there, no charges are being pressed, but that's it. And I started to avoid these checkpoints, and I limited my have very important papers to go, I freak out the night before because I know I'm going to face these kind of people. And it's not easy at all to live with this every day while you have other struggles to deal with. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Yeah, if I may, it's very important what you are telling us today, and I think that everyone here knows the importance of your declarations, and because of political situation in Tunisia today is really very complicated and strict, and we are coming back if we adopt a linear conception of the history, but it's very interesting and important what you said about we are coming back to defend our basic rights, like the freedom of speech, the freedom of movement, like what you say now in terms of if I have to do something important, I try to understand how to avoid the possibility to meet this police checkpoint or authorities in a broad sense. And this is very shocking because Tunisia, thanks to the 2010 revolution, the 2011 revolution, it started in 2010 with Mohamed Bouazizi, death, and even way before that. And even before, in 2008, with revolts in Gaza, and everywhere. But in 2011, Ben Ali was obliged to go in Qatar or Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, like the TV transmission about Jeddah. This is a joke, but and after 2011 and until not last year, like last 5 years, 6 years. So we had in Tunisia the hope of the world, like democratic transition, the revolution that has demonstrated the possibility of change, like democratic elections, after that constituent assembly, and after that 3 years for writing the new constitution. And in 2014 we had the new constitution with gender equality, also recognized it, but still gender equality in terms of heterosexual gender equality, so women and men are equal, but the LGBTQIA issues are not.
Before they were equal, to be honest.
Yeah.
That new constitution was not really revolutionary in terms, but it was more a democratic constitution that took a lot of the authorities of the ruling, the president, the ministers. So I think that was really the best part of it.
Yeah, like a good experiment in terms of compromises between different parts of the civil society, which were in two opposite modernists and Islamists, or traditionalists and modernists, conservatives and progressives. Well, scholarship has a lot of definition of this polarization in terms of a civil society, which is still very, like you say, progressive and secular in the daily life. And then you have part of the society which, after years and years of repression of the President Ben Ali and the repression against the Islamists, they took the space. And we have now this possibility, and we took the place, the parliament, etc. But it's very interesting that in some years, like between 2011, we can say, or the democratic transition in terms of procedures, that this is correct in terms of international organization. They are really following the steps of democracy. So another country can like disappeared. No? This is something very rapid in terms of really few years, and I was doing these friends from Italy, from abroad, from other countries were living there, and really they were speaking like freedom everywhere, or in Tunisia, in the capital, because there is another
absolutely
divide between center and periphery, of course, but in the capital, at the cultural level, at even freedom of speech, being queer, of course, is very problematic because of the penal code and the Article 230, and you have to be, always a bit
cautious.
Cautious in terms of express sexual relationships in particular in the public space, but there was a good atmosphere in order to feel that you had these possibilities, these political possibilities to appear and therefore, as I said, to claim your rights. Now this setback, this very, very big setback is too problematic because we are Busha Berhaj Amida was one of the institutional representatives of the democratic transition process. So you have one woman who is a lawyer, a very important public personality, who was one of the protagonists of the COLIB, the important commission for individual liberties, which was not elected, but named by the President of the Republic of Tunisia, another one. And so you have a person like her, which now is under judgment because of the public offense or offense against the state. And so this is very shocking and like schizophrenic. So living there as a young queer people is even more difficult that we can conceive, because always we compare experiences now that we read, that we hear about, with our personal experience in our daily life. So for me, it's too important that you are here to tell us, and maybe also to the students, about how complex and how brave you are, because you are here talking about that, how complex and difficult could be what we can consider normal, about freedom. So I think that the most important thing is to consider that every kind of freedom that we have is not for always.
Yes.
Could be very transitional, temporary.
Nothing is
and your direct experience in terms of Tunisian politics and in terms of your personal life is really a testimony of that. So this is a very important thing that we have to learn every day and to think every day, that we have to struggle every day to defend pieces of the whole picture, and the Tunisian case is telling us the opposite. It is telling us the possibility for authorities to use technologies, for example, and more, like Israel in Palestine is using facial recognition, like in China, against the Palestinians who are under occupation, and Tunisia is using drones, or Facebook chats. This kind of things we have to think about them every day. And I think that your testimony is really important and brave. So first of all, thank you for everything you're saying today.
I appreciate the way you see it. And just to tell you about something that is not known for many people in Tunisia. In the era of the Nordafrica received a lot of money from Qatar. we were really cautious to the point that we put our cell phones in aluminium and hide them in another room to intercept the spike. Another really things that the Nanda did was to spread its eyes and ears everywhere to be able to control everything, which is happening until today actually. There are still many, they invaded Tunis. Absolutely invaded Tunis. Well, then people would tell me, okay, but they were elected by people. Yeah, but being elected by people does not give you the permission to conquer the country in a very illegal and unethical ways. And you are the person or the entity that says that you respect, you're very ethical and you respect the religious principles, and it's not true. And they stole every little money that was still there after Bernardi, and to give them their compensation to their followers for their faithfulness. We're talking about huge numbers here. Every person that was related to Nanda received money, and this political party has thousands, if not millions, of followers. And not just from Qatar, they received gifts and his instruments, but the money of Tunisia was divided on these people. And then, why did this, the colleague, for example, one of these initiatives to promote human rights and to modify the problematic laws that are still in the penal code, why did it fall? It was the one that's still in the constitution, in the parliament. They did not accept that, and not for principle, it wasn't just because this does not go with our principle. It was their image that was touched, because if they allow this, they kind of would be seen as against the religion and the principles. So they did not want to lose their followers, but at the end they did not really care about this. Whether it's yes or no, they did not care. They cared about their image. So they decided the fate of many coming generations and people living there, just because they did not want to lose followers and to be able to be always strong. And at a certain moment, Nanda committed terroristic attacks against the army. It terrified everyone. That era of Nada, for me, was way worse than what it was before. The terrorist attacks, I think, against the army, I'm not sure if it's 2014 or 2015, but I remember it very clearly. It was one of the saddest events ever, because Nada also allowed the terrorists to exist in the mountains of Tunisia, and really gave the freedom for them to move from Nigeria to Tunisia to make a base for training terrorists here in Tunis. And when the army was fighting against that, they killed a lot of people of the army. There were these 3 days where Tunisia was so sad. There were more than 12 or 13 persons from the army killed in one day. I think what Nanda did destroyed what was left of Tunisia after the war. So we went very low, economically speaking, or rights and liberties wise, and everyone of Nanda just left and traveled and continued his life as a and no one pressed any charges against them. No one is strong enough to say that they did this and this and this and this. And then afterwards, all the maybe at Beijing City tried to do something that he really tried, but he didn't have that.
constitution 1 year ago.
So yeah, it's pretty serious, it's pretty dangerous, it's pretty.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now, why Tunisians are not speaking that loud? Because really, economically speaking, Tunisia is suffering so bad. Basic steps. For the last months or years, there was a shortage in the farming, in the milk, in the sugar, in the.
Yeah. Primary.
It's really, and then we think that it's also political to make people think about these primary things and not think about politics. It could be a strategy, but it's hard to prove from where this crisis comes from. And I think.
May I ask you a
Yes,
question? Do you think that when Western countries have a good relation with Tunisia and they say, because they know that it isn't so, but they say that Tunisia is the sure place, is a democratic
Safe place, like Italy.
What
Italy considers, I'm
is
sorry,
that?
Italy considers Tunisia as a safe country. So people from Tunisia, when they seek asylum here, they are refused because they say it's safe in Tunisia, we go back. That's one of the.
And this is for economic relations or the matter of immigrants that Tunisia has to manage or other reasons for which
They consider Tunisia as a safe place?
there is no Western voice that says something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the West is already suffering with the huge waves of immigrants, and if they start saying something, it's like a proof that Tunisia is really suffering. So you don't have the right to not accept people of Tunisia if you really want to help, if these people are seeking your help. So it's like you confess or you admit that Tunisia is suffering and has problems, and that will create a lot of pressure of immigrants of another way. But that's not really smart, politically speaking, from the government, the Italian government or any other European government, to say, okay, Tunisia is really suffering. And Italy now is given a lot of money to tourism. To do what? To buy more equipment to spy on the illegal immigrants. Like you find Tunisia not having basic things, but you find the National Guard having very highly equipped tools to
control, yeah.
It's just nonsense. I mean, before I come here, Italy gave tourists more than 10 million euros just to buy these more equipment.
And the public opinion in Italy, there is not much discourse about this.
True that. And that's where the part where people should move and talk and investigate more, because yes, I feel like it's not enough people supporting other people from outside, which is also sort of good because it can make pressure on the Tunisian government, because Tunisia also is in debt to the European Union. So if the people from Europe, for example, sometimes when there is a new ambassador in Tunis, they always try to meet first with the civil society, like some people. Lately there was the new ambassador of the Netherlands. She just arrived, and the day we met her, it was the same day that we entered the
how the authorities can repress individuals.
They can force you, absolutely.
Yeah, they can force you and they can oblige you to practice practices which are against any human rights respect. So, and this commission of the United Nations say to Tunisia, hey, you are a democratic state now, you can't do that.
Yeah, but they never accepted the recommendations related to either the 230, the article of criminalizing homosexuality or the annual best. They never accepted any recommendations related to that part. Which is so strange because Tunisia is trying to improve its image, but at the same time.
And here maybe there is the political use of Islam, which is not the case in terms of majority of the politicians in Tunisia historically. After after the Tunisian independence in 1956, Bourguiba was one of the most reformist presidents of the Arab countries in terms of try to manage the religious obligations with the rationality and the critique, and then still we can see that religion is still politically instrumentalized when it occurs to repress individual freedoms, individual liberties, which is very serious, as I said. Because Tunisia hasn't this. Yes, okay, we have Zaytuna, we have this kind of scholarship, of religious scholarship, which was trained.
But it's not
in one of the
really
most important institutions for Islam in the Islamic world. But it's not a very conservative.
No, it's not.
It's
not even conservative. It's there for very scientific reasons.
Yeah.
To study this subject away from society, away from the state, the way it should be. It's not like, for example, in Egypt, if you see Al-Azhar, it's super conservative, and people there go there to ask their questions, and it's like Al-Azhar have the ability to say that this law is good and this law is not good, and we should reform this. They have that capacity, but the Zaytuna was just there for very scientific reasons, for
studies,
Islamic studies, like, and nothing related to politics, nothing related to. So it's complicated.
Qualcuno vuole chiedere qualcosa?
I think I'm gonna skip.
Sara ci vuole dire, per esempio, tante cose, ma ci vuoi dire qualcosa?
Yeah, I have some slides with some photos if you want to see them, because my idea was to speak exactly of one of those experiences of queer activism through art. And this was my research on that phase, that historical phase. It was, I was in Tunis in 2016, in 2017, and 2018 in order to observe and this experience, and in order to participate to this artistic, feminist and queer festival. And for that reason too, it's too shocking to hear this kind of things today, 5 years later. So also maybe it could be interesting for students and for us to discuss about how things can very rapidly change.
Yes, I'm going to sit there to be
Like
able to follow.
there.
Yes.
Yeah. But my research focus was about queerness and public visibility for a new politics of recognition in Tunisia after the revolution of 2010-2011. And my research started with, I'm more expert on Morocco, if you can say, because I lived more years in Rabat, in Morocco, than in Tunis. I lived some months for research. But so my first experience in terms of research on these topics was Morocco, and in particular how after 2011 the artistic and cultural domain have experienced this shift in terms of paying attention to sexual and reproductive rights, and this is in particular a theatre piece performance named Diali. In Moroccan Arabic, Diali means the possessive adjective, referred to this is mine, but in this case it is referred to women's sexuality and in particular to vagina, because there are many names used to name vagina, but this is shuma, this is like something that you cannot say in public space, so normally you say diali like the mind. And this theater performance was performed in the French Cultural Institute in 2012, so 1 year after that, after the Tunisian Revolution, the uprisings spread also in other countries and in Morocco too. In the February 2011, a very big movement, the 20 February movement, started from this date, started to protest against corruption, against the system of power, against injustice, claiming dignity, freedom, human rights, social justice. Karama, Hurriyat, Modelli was one of the main slogan in the streets in Rabat, in Morocco, in many cities and villages, like it was in Tunisia and other cities in Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, in Tahrir Square in Egypt. So this is just an example of this wave of artistic activism, because it's a cultural expression, an artistic production from a group from Rabat, Aquarium. Maybe you know Naima Zetan, this director from the theater Aquarium group from Rabat. And the director, Naima Zetan, and the actresses of this piece were considered against public morals, were menaced to death on social medias, and this piece was very contested in the public debate, in particular by the more conservative individuals and persons. It was considered against morals, but it is part of a context, also in Morocco, like in Tunisia, after the revolution. Individual liberties, individual freedoms, and sexual and reproductive rights were particularly an important issue which was debated by civil society. The right to have abortion, like voluntary abortion, so not for alternative reasons. The right to have sexual relationships outside marriage, because as you know, in every country from the Middle East and North Africa, or North Africa and Southwest Asia, like in the decolonial studies we call now Middle East, we call it more geographically like Southwest Asia, sexual relationships are not allowed if you are not married with someone, of course, an heterosexual marriage. So, and a lot of young people used to have sexual relations, but with some adjustment in terms of avoid regard the Hashuma culture, like Zainab Fasiki says, an illustrator from Morocco. which published a very nice graphic novel named Shuma, with H at the beginning of the word, in terms of the culture of the la vergogna, no? The culture of the shame, thank you, which in particular is referred to the prohibition for women and LGBTQ rights and individuals to be free in the public space. Because if a woman has sexual relationships before marriage, is Shuma. If a man has a sexual relations before marriage, okay, has to have some experiences, it's okay. So it's not really the same, even though religion, this big discourse, there is not one interpretation. We know Islam is very plural, etc. But even though religion says that this norm is valid for everyone. In this phase, so after 2011, the debates around and on the sexual and reproductive rights, freedom, individual freedoms were very much debated, and this particular intervention will be focused on the experience of Giorno Festival, so the International Feminist Art Festival, which has been organized annually in Tunis after 2015. So we can observe this experience like a very positive or constructive or affirmative example of this phase where in Tunisia we could observe, we could participate in some experiences like that. So my research tries to understand the relationship between gender, aesthetic dissent and social change in order to look at art and artistic production like a political incubator. So first of all, we can subvert the victimization paradigm, which is very much used in the Western scholarship when we look at women from Arab or from Muslim majority countries, and we have to subvert this in Western scholarship, of course, because it's still very much used with an agency paradigm. So we have to understand power relations, of course, we have to decodify power relations, but we can understand resistance and we can understand the subversion of power relations in many ways. So there is not only the opposition with the power in a classical way to which we have the habitus to think about. So there is power, so we have to do a demonstration and we have to declare that this is not good, and we go out of the parliament, in front of the parliament, and we denounce it. Or we are in a relation of submission with our husband or with a man from our family, and we have to struggle and to say that this is not good. But there are many other ways in order to navigate resistance and to subvert patriarchal paradigms. And so I cannot have here much time in order to go deep into this question, but we can refer here to Lila Bulgod, a very well-known article, Do Muslim Women Need Saving, of 2002, where she criticizes the narratives on this point, which were spreading after 2001, so in particular the attack to New York Trade Center. And so we observed a very salvific narrative in Western scholarship towards women from Muslim world, from Muslim majority countries. We have to save women so we can occupy Afghanistan, and so we have to occupy also Iraq because we have to save women. But as we know, after 20 years, this was totally false. but public opinion also in Italy was convinced that, okay, but maybe this is right because effectively women could be more free, helped by the West. But this is a very complex theme, and we can have a critical approach, and we can also understand if queer people from Muslim majority countries, as we define them, but our countries or simply from Nordafrica and Southeast Asia, need saving. In what sense we can understand this kind of emancipation or liberation. So we can observe that after 2011, many forms of transformative agency gave a new political meaning to the public space, with according with freedom became insurgent, when it is resignified in terms of activism, in terms of a place where we can experience political possibilities. So there was effectively a window of opportunity in terms of rights which were claimed, but also which were in a sense experienced. And here I refer to the maybe formal and not substantial, but it was written on the text. And this is a premiere in the Arab world, so gender equality recognized in the Constitution of Morocco in 2011 and in Tunisia in 2014, even though in Morocco we do not have a democratic process to arrive to the constitutional adoption. And even though this equality it was already recognized in the constitutions in terms of civil and political rights, but here we have declared women and men are equal and blah 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 blah. In Morocco, then we have a lot of obstacles to this equality in the same Article 19. In Tunisia is different in this situation, but it's the first time that in an Arab country you can find without by an agent signing written equality between the two sexes. Okay, so it's an heterosexual, heteronormative equality, because we have then in the penal code, as already Amani said, the penalization of homosexuality in the Article 230. So as Zakia Samina said, she's a very important scholar on feminism and gender issues, but not only in Morocco, in North Africa. We can observe a sexual turn in protests after 2011, because of course people demanded democracy, people demanded freedom, and in particular social justice, so also redistribution in the national wealth. This economic point, as also Amani said, we have not to forget the economic part of the protests, even though we are here in the recognition protests and claims. In the recognition struggles, we found sexual turn. So more claims for individual freedoms, sexual and reproductive rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, and also new masculinities, because it's also a problem for men. They have the habitus to be conceived as strong and economic, responsible for everyone around them, and many men and young boys are saying, but maybe it could be different even for us. Why we have to be the protagonists of the patriarchal situation? We are not agreeing with this situation. So we can say a new ways of conceiving, performing, and redefine genders through also artistic activism. And the case of Shurtuna is a way of, we can say, artivism, which is defined as a way to perform and embody aesthetics and politics, also in a festive and utopian dimension. So art can go beyond the representation of the reality and can engage in its transformation. It could be a third space, which is alternative to art and activism, which are conceived as blocks, separate blocks, and could be a new safe space for a proactive resistance. And I appreciated very much when he said, when I was young, I met Shuf activists, and I was thinking, wow, these are all in one space, all these women talking, chatting, and realizing projects, and this is a safe space, effectively, for everyone who can join and participate within this kind of projects, which have the aim to change the mentality. So here the aim is not to obtain a higher salary or to have more space in order to do a protest or to fight against repression in a classical sense in terms of methods of contention, but the aim is on the long run in order to change the mentality of the majority of people and to gain more space in the public visibility area. This term of public visibility is very important because, as also Amani said, if you are visible, you can claim your rights. And this is a slogan maybe that we can remind in our future days, because for us maybe visibility is for us generalized, but it's maybe something that you can be comfortable with, but visibility is not always for all. No? It's not something which is a present for everyone. No? You have to struggle for, and if we are here today, it's thanks to precedent historical struggles, which, for example, were made by workers, feminists, and human rights activists in our country and globally in all the world. So, in the entire world. So here we understand public visibility as something which is very important because we can conceive politics and the political arena as the place where there is a distribution of the sensible, like Jacques Rancière says. So we have a redistribution of rights and visibilities in the public space. There are some people who are entitled to have visibility and rights, and other people who are not entitled to have visibility or rights. We can think here, for example, in Italy, to immigrants or to the far-right narrative against immigrants which are illegal, who stole our jobs, and etc., etc. So here the problem is how, for example, how they have visibility. They can really claim their rights. They can have voice in the public space. So we had, for example, a deputy of the new parliament, which came in the parliament, a black man, with the shoes of the fellah, of the agrarian workers. And this was symbolically very important in order to gain this space of visibility for invisible people. Why it's important, public visibility? Because it's the space where people can create subaltern counterpublics, according with Nancy Fraser's idea of subaltern counterpublics, which are new ways of understanding cultures, new discourses, new narratives, which are anti-hegemonic or simply different from the hegemonic one. So, for example, Amani said, this is not normal for non-conforming people. So if you are not conforming with the norm, what's about your right, what's about your claims, what's about your visibility? And another important point, in my opinion, when we speak about queer activism, queer public visibility, is that, and I observed this kind of experience with Shurkumuna, they propose transformative remedies for social injustice. Queer people in Tunisia, in particular, with this organization, which is Shuf, and with their festival, Shurkumuna, they don't say simply we want affirmative remedies to social injustice. We do not simply want marriages also for queer people. We do not want gender equality for queer people, but we want to transform the way of thinking to gender, sexual relations. So this is a very interesting shift, which is realized by Nancy Fraser. There are movements or subjects that claim affirmative remedies. So I want the same that like the struggles for equalities in the feminist movement, also in Italy. And then there is another feminism, which is the femminismo della differenza, which says, no, we are different, so we want to change the ways through which you are looking at the sexual relations, and we want our space, but it's another way, it's another space, so we have to change mainly the system of how we conceive social relations, power relations, and we need our space, we need our identity, we need to have the possibility to claim our rights in a free way in the public space. How Salime talks about aesthetic citizenship or acts of aesthetic citizenship. So we will look at Shikuna like an example of how these ways to have instruments from a theoretical background. And of course, we look at gender in an intersectional way, by considering that also class and ethnicity are categories which interact between themselves, and this is an illustration by Xenophasis, the author of Schumann, which I have quoted before. I Skype a bit on methodology and etc., but if we can today talk about queer movements and queer struggles, we have also to consider that we have had a feminist long history in the entire Arab region. So according to scholars and activists during the 20th century, we had a lot of secular feminist demands and claims. This is in 2011 and 12 in particular in some photos from Morocco. We have this polarization between secular and Islamist activists, so we don't have to imagine that queer activism today appears like, okay, thanks to the revolution we are now on the scene. Yes, of course, the revolution opened a lot of windows of possibilities, but there is a very long history of activism for women's rights and for individual rights, but still, if there are continuities, it was not so easy to make feminists, even secular feminists, accepting queer issues. There were some resistances and some also negotiations which were realized by the queer movement in Tunisia. But revolution was very important because I'm sorry, I Skype a bit, because effectively after 2011 many LGBTQ associations found the possibility to be registered legally, to be legalized. So in Tunisia, for example, we had some web pages like My Word before 2011. We had some Kalimati, My Word. And then we had the magazine Gay Day, which was published, and after that we had the legalization of Shams, which means sun, Shuf, which is the one that organizes this festival, which means look, so here the focus on the public visibility. Mawjoudin in Arabic means we exist, so we are here. And Daush, which means integration. Okay, so after 2011, effectively, the revolution and the opening of new windows of political possibility created the space to be legalized for this association, and now Hamani said there is no possibility to be registered or
For 3 or 4 years now.
yeah, it is like blocked, like that. Okay. We come directly in these experiences. So Shuftuhuna. Shuftuhuna means two things, mainly literally. Shuftuhuna digyusin, which is an expression which is used mainly by men sitting at the cafe when they are looking at female bodies walking on the street. So do you see them? Like it's very nice body. And so it's a very patriarchal place on the public space. If you go in Tunis or in Rabat, now things are changing, like you said, but mainly there are men reading newspapers or chatting things. And it was a very nice experience of some Tunisian activists. They were simply in mass, like a lot of female activists in some cafes, which are normally inhabited by men, and this was like, who are them? And they were just simply chatting and eating, like, okay, we have the right to be here in this cafe, this is not your space. And this was also viral with some videos on YouTube. If you want to search them, it's very nice to watch the faces of men, like, who are them? And women activists, like, yeah, we are calm and sitting here. And Shuftuhuna means also, I already saw them. So it's something that means I am aware of their presence in the public space. And so the activists of this festival, Feminist Artistic Festival, play with these words, with these senses, in order to depatriarchalize the gaze of people on the bodies in the public space, but also to work on the awareness in terms of public visibility for women and for queer people, because the very first collective of Shuftuhuna was made by women or by, there's also a guy, a man, but people who perceive themselves as women. So this was the first group of the festival, and the association in particular, Shuf Association, was working on public visibility of lesbians or queer women people, because there is a double
This wasn't the
discrimination.
I'm sorry, this wasn't the first.
This wasn't the first, this is 2017, I think.
Yeah. Because it was way smaller the first time.
It was smaller, yeah. Yeah, you are right, I'm sorry. This is the 2017 when I was there, and they had a big, also media.
That's why I'm just pointing out that it's a detail, but to see that it's got bigger with time.
Yeah.
If not just some internal problems, it would have been staying until now. But half of these people are already outside Tunis now.
Yeah, I know, because effectively the first time that the festival was created was in Carthage, in a safe space.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
In a safe space which was also protected by Raja Ben Ammar, an artist from the cultural elite from Tunis, which was very open to this kind of claims and proposals. And then the group grew, and unfortunately now there is a phase where we do not know if festival continues or not. But it was really an experience who gave a lot to the audience, to the activists, to me personally. It was like, I'm in Berlin, because there was really a lot of very interesting documentaries, films, theater performances, artistic paintings, cinema. There was also football.
Yes.
There was a beautiful football here like workshop. There was a porno section.
Also female.
Yeah. Just mainly female, but it was open to everyone. So there were also some boys joining the group, but it was mainly female as the association.
It's an LGBT association. It's for women and people identified.
Yeah, for women identifying them as women. So, and there were also some conferences. In particular, in 2018, I was participating with my restitution to the observation of the president here. And there were also this German activist scholar which was in the group, Hannah, and the aim of the conferences was, she said, to think together with the academic world about the meaning of our feminism, intersectional feminism, and to think together with artists what artivism is related to class, political and economic sense of belonging. So here we have how we understand how feminism and art and activism interact themselves in this experience. There was a focus on ethnicity, so the focus on intersectionality. This was really operationalized. A focus on ethnicity, like the Berber or Amazigh flag here. There was a Moroccan Amazigh delegation. And there is a focus also on the post-colonial and post-revolutionary context of this experience. And there is a beautiful video about this feeling to be still colonized after 60 years of independence. And you can find this video on YouTube. And another interesting point is about the understanding of feminism, which is conceived as free and situated strongly against every form of discrimination. So our formula in terms of self-representation is simple: women has the right to decide freely over their own bodies. So here you have also these opening ideas in terms of women or men identifying themselves as women, but everyone has to decide freely on their own bodies. And of course here there is a reappropriation of the public space, because this festival was open to everyone, was freely accessible. It was in the Medina, and now we will see what this means for them. So the first arena of resistance was exactly this, that as the first experience was realized in the elite neighborhood of Carthage, this festival passed to be realized in the Medina, in the city center, in the National Theatre of this beautiful square, which is still normally inhabited by men sitting at cafes, while women just passes through the square, like doing their stuff and buying something, or just pass through the square, while men occupy the space. No? So it was really interesting to look at this kind of fusion. There were 250 artists from all over the world participating in this festival, and many of them were too eccentric or, colored, multicolored. So you have this very quiet square that in these 3-4 days is inhabited by this very colored and new people, men, women, queer people, and the reaction was not so bad. For example, we were having lots of cafes in this bar, which normally is occupied only by men. But the responsible of the cafe was very happy, because of course he was gaining a lot of money. But we didn't find any kind of, men were here looking at football, and in the meanwhile here you have some groups from the festival chatting, or a mixity in the public space, which was really accepted by the people in the square. This was the internal part of the theater, where people were capable to feel freedom, but also to express their love.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, someone from there.
No, it's myself.
This is so great. After some years, and here it was nice because you can see also people express love and have some kisses, for example. Of course, it was not a private space, but it was protected.
It was protected very well.
Because you had to enter in the theater and then arrive in this space, but it was a public space, so people felt free in this occasion. And hearing about the today daily life, you can compare. It was just a few years ago, and there was also mediatization of the festival. You had buses in the city advertising Giorno. There was an advertising very important in the city, so also the municipality of Tunis was not against this festival. Of course, festival had external funding like foundations and national and international foundation, but not from the state.
No, absolutely not from the state. I just want to say some small detail. What happened? What helped also to make this spread and be not so attacked is the fact that they emphasize that this is a feminist festival and not really highlighting the fact that it's queer also. But back at that time, all feminists are also believing in the queer cause, so it was really intersectional. But for authorities and all.
But this is very important. This is something that I pointed out because during the opening speeches, they said this is a feminist, international feminist art. But in 2018, so in the very last edition, they mentioned the queer issue. And this is also a way to find their space. So it's strategical, of course, so the activists found their space in continuity with feminist activism in Tunisia, which is very normalized, even though there are the Islamists who are against gender equality. The feminist activism is recognized in the preamble of the constitution, is part of the history of Tunisia, so it's accepted. It's something which is part of the history of the country. So they were surfing this wave of normalization of feminism, and then after some years, in 2018, they declared their queer positionality. There was Silvia Quattrini's with another activist, maybe the youngest one, she's a lawyer too. I didn't remember her name. There were two.
It was
the opening speech, and they said, we are feminists, we are also queer in 2018, so after 3 years of this festival. There was an horizontal methodology in terms of collaboration. Of course, there is one leadership which is more leadership than the others, and some conflicts somehow, but they try to have this kind of horizontal methodology, and many other issues like environment and ecology also was present in the festival, and violence, of course. This was the theater piece in which denounces violence which was suffered by the New York artist, I think. She came from New York. There was a subversion of the general divide because a lot of art activists of the president generation of here, in particular the parents of one of the activists, were present with them. They were supporting their daughters, and there was a mixity also in terms of generation. And there was a relation with historical feminism in terms of collaboration with one of the most very well-known secular feminist association of the Tunisia panorama. And also I understood that the festival was augmenting the quantity of the volunteers who participated in in the festival, from 12 to 100 in 1 year, and a lot of kind of belongings and of sense of belongings were also present here. Yeah. Everyone gave me their consensus in terms of, this is maybe in terms of methodology, this was something that I realized in collaboration with them in terms of do you want that I take you photos or I publish interviews. I published an article which was read by Amal and Silvia, so they gave me also the stamp of okay, you can you can do that. So I consider that this kind of relaboration is too much important when we got some information from other people. And so there were a lot of indicators. It's kind of attempt, it's kind of tentative. We cannot quantify everything always, and this is not my aim. But there were very different elements and very different dimensions where this festival subverts the traditional categories, and a lot of compliments for participants, for users, people that were just here to watch what's happening, to see what's happening, and they said la Tunisie vous en sera plus en plus reconnaissante. Bravo à l'équipe de Théâtre National pour qu'elle fait de cet espace légendaire, parce que c'est le Théâtre National. Et puis, merci pour cette initiative. Cioè grazie, date lustro alle donne e agli uomini tunisini, è formidabile ciò che fate. Preghiamo il buon Dio, prions le bon Dieu pour que ce vent souffle. Donc vous voyez, you can see a lot of bravo pour les gens. Donc je vais, I will stop here with this image and with this direction with a door which is open. So in terms of hope, because we strongly hope that things can change in another direction today. And I really would like to thank Kamani for her testimony and you for the attention. Thank you. And I will stop here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was really just some ethnography which I shared with you and some reflections from the field, like we said, but it was real and it was so exciting and so nice to be there. I enjoyed really much because there was contemporary art, freedom of expression, love, dance, music, and this was really rich in terms of art, but in terms of claiming space, claiming their voice, and there was absolutely harmony. There was not attack, or you have not to imagine that this was contested. In the public space, this was very, in those days, and I know that Shuf and the other activists in the years before this festival, they had to struggle a lot in order to arrive to this final result of their struggle. It was a preparation of civil society, it was building up on feminist struggles and open a door for queer claims, but it was extraordinary to me. It was really like, wow. And this is something that I appreciated very much, and it was really something similar in my life. I felt like I'm in Berlin where everything is possible, or in New York, these kinds of global cities where everything is possible. And Tunis in those days seemed to be a global city. And these activists, also like Amani, you know, they are global activists. They know what is passing, what is the situation of other countries. They travel, they are aware about everything. They are in connection between them and between other activists around the world. So also this national dimension is not very much useful, maybe sometimes to understand phenomena and social processes, because we are interconnected, and so there is really a transnational activism which is realized, because in the end, I felt like this. There were connections from all over the world, from South America, from the Arab countries, from Italy there was someone. There was Nordafrica's documentary, do you remember that? Which won two editions, which I was observing Nordafrica's documentary about women who in Italy don't want to be mothers. And Nordafrica's are the ships which cannot have little ships. In Sardinia, this word means infertility, but this was on choice. It was not about infertility or the possibility to not have children, but on the choice to really decide to do not have children. And this was very important. Also, the debate was very interesting. And
one of the women who organized also Shofia, she's especially the last years, she's Italian actually.
She's
Italian.
Silvia?
Yeah. No, not Silvia. Another one. Alessia.
Alessia, yes, with also with the blonde. There were Italian activists within the group, a German one, but it was not a fixed group.
Absolutely.
It was also a changing group, and there was someone fixed and someone.
At the festival, were there also Western people participating?
Yeah, absolutely. From all over the world, there were 250 artists from Europe, from North America, from South America. There was also an activist from China, which was also a queer activist from China who experienced the jail in China because of their activism. Her project was Vagina China, I remember. And she had some postcards. Do you remember her?
I don't, but the name was
the some postcards on her project. This was really incredible, and an organization incredible.
Yes, and which do you think is the now today what the experience lives up to date?
This is a very important question, because there are some studies who work on memory. For example, how the memory of the revolution can work on the daily life, how you can react to that esprit, that spirit. I sincerely don't know, because maybe we have to ask to Amani or to the if you want, but it's a very difficult situation. So I think that maybe there are some clouds where things can be shared in some groups of friends, of activists, but as also Amani told us before, you have not the possibility to do the same in a wider space, in the public space as before. So you can be in a protected, safe space of your association or a group of friends who are mainly also activists sometimes.
Clandestinity.
Maybe not same. You have to put attention on everything you write, you say, that your telephone, etc. And so, yeah, maybe this kind of experiences could help in giving us the ideas that it was possible, it was there. And maybe so we can regain that space. How to do that? Of course, we have some forces which are very structured and very strong, actually. The state now is orienting itself towards another direction, but I don't know, maybe the external, not in terms of funds, in financial terms, which are of course important in terms of factibility of things, but in terms of support, I don't know, the cultural foundations or also Tunisian ones, not even just European, for example, the French Cultural Institute, the Danish embassy, so the more progressive European, because even the Italian Cultural Institute doesn't do anything of this kind, but French or Spanish or the Netherlands, they do a lot of, they give a lot of support to civil society in cultural terms, but also Tunisian foundations, for example, like Madar or other cultural realities can support this kind of activism. I don't know.
Yes, it's a fact. No, what you're saying is completely true.
I don't know.
No, it is true. No, it is true. I work in civil society, and even I work with a cultural NGO in Tunis. This cultural NGO is receiving a lot of money from Switzerland, Giorno's foreign foundation. They are really invested and they really want to see the improvement. They are investing in the structure even more than the projects. It's really encouraging.
It's encouraging, but then you have the constraints of
for the political, the foreign funding. It's complicated. There are always ways to makes it harder, it makes you lose energy that you could have used in really approaching your goals and doing your projects, and not to find a way to get your money there. It's a waste of energy, time, and effort.
And the Tunisian community abroad is in contact with these realities, cultural.
I'm not sure. I can't answer you. I don't think so much, because when you are Tunisian and you go outside, you need to start rebuilding your entire life from zero, from scratch. And that's
not networks.
While you're Tunisian, it's really hard for you to integrate yourself outside. So you need to rebuild everything you already built in your country from scratch. And so I don't think they are in that comfort of helping Tunisia now, or being the visible element outside. So they're focusing on themselves to get a good position to be able to, but that takes a lot of time. And that's a very personal point of view, of course, debatable.